Okay, here we are with our next issue, Toyfare number 9, cover dated May 1998 with a $3.99 cover price. This great shot of Batman and Robin from the animated show from Kenner, not from Hasbro, but from Kenner, and also features on Star Trek. Looks like the classic series there, and Beanie Babies. It's interesting to have Beanie Babies in the top box there when there's really not much on Beanie Babies inside. But of course, that was a phenomenon going on at the same time as all the new figures for Star Wars and Batman that I guess they couldn't resist having that there at the top just to try and pull in some other readers. All right, so let's dive into it. The first is the two-page spread of ads. Again, very indicative of the time, 1998. A lot of independent comics were making action figures. And in this case, on the left, you'll see Antarctic Press. They were making toys based off their warrior nun Ariella character and their Luftwaffe 1946 comic series. It's a great way to prepare and promote the comic series by having an action figure alongside of it and just something else to collect. It's great for hobby shops. I almost kind of think that Diamond was actually pushing a lot of people to make these things because they were great markups, great returns, and a lot of people bought a lot of this stuff. On the right, probably more famous was the Puppet Master series from Full Moon Toys. Independent movie company making great, cool action figures of their, I guess it was like a stop motion horror movie where the toys came to life and killed people. So, of course, what better way to make action figures than that? Pinhead, Leech Woman, looks great. I remember those were a lot of fun. Then we'll see an ad here from anotheruniverse.com, which I thought was just a competitor to actionace.com. Then I found out it was more of a, it was Dark Horse Comics retail outlet. So they had their comic publishing, they made toys, but they also had their own retail experience out there in Portland and online. And I saw it at places like Universal Studios, things like that. So it was like a pop culture hotspot back in the day. Not so much anymore, but definitely something that was out there. In this issue of Toyfare, we will be looking at the 1998 Toyfare special report. So the New York Toyfare, we'll be seeing some photos from there. There's a Q&A interview with Larry Hama, the man behind G.I. Joe, when he was in his early 40s. There's going to be an issue of the Twisted Meagle Theater and look at some of the stuff from the new Batman Adventures animated show. So let's get going. I'm going to skip over the editorial, but looking at this ad for Faith posable action figure, I guess 1998 was a huge time for independent comics and action figures. So almost every publisher, no matter how big or small, would get out there and start making figures. Obviously, this one would appeal to a certain male audience. I don't remember the Faith comic. I don't even know who published it. This figure is coming from Skybolt Toys, which took on a lot of licenses from kind of these independent comic companies. So they did some good job with stuff there. Just getting the figures out there. I don't think the sculpt is anything special. I don't really remember much about it, but the key points here to remember are that it was a hobby market exclusive, as coming from the pages of the comic that nobody really heard of, and mainly the trick here was the 2 variant figures per case. So 1998, people still are trying out the tricks in the comic book covers, so they're also going to do the tricks to get people to buy more in case lots. So how many pieces were there, we're not sure, but it says here there's a 5,000 limited edition platinum figure that was $14.95, so that was the key one to get. And as we know today, it was a simple paint change, so it's not that special, but they were still limited, and it's something for you to chase, so quite interesting. But we'll see a lot of these in this issue and going forward for at least the next few years in Toyfare magazine. As you know, even myself publishing comics, we were about to release action figures as well, so I think everybody just basically did it. Then we go to the fanfare, the letters to the editor. We'll kind of skip through this, but again, I want to point out, I love these things on the side. The Toyfare AOL poll. So this is obviously before internet. I mean, the internet was around. I mean, actionace.com, we sold action figures online, but even we were using modems to dial into the internet at that point. Broadband wasn't a thing, and we're still 10 years away from the first iPhone. So it's quite interesting to take a look at this 20 plus years back. So McFarlane released a line of Kiss action figures, and they were hugely successful, and they were just super cool, and I guess kind of brought back a renaissance for the Kiss singers, the Kiss band. Can you imagine that? 20 years, they were renaissance already. I guess they were popular in the 70s, so I mean, this was a 10-year hiatus before they came back. McFarlane was great at doing monsters, so these are the superstar rock and roll monster band. So they did really well. So the question here is, which rock entity should McFarlane Toys tackle after Kiss? So I guess we're dipping into a lot of these kind of 80s kind of metal bands, I guess. So the first one was A, Twisted Sister, B, AC/DC, C, Ozzy Osbourne, D, Marilyn Manson, E, Jim Morrison's Corpse, F, Hanson, which is not really a rock band, but okay, and then G, Other. So of course everybody has their own ideas, and you can see some of the choices were for like Danzig, Pantera, Metallica, Jimi Hendrix. Oh, a lot of these actually McFarlane would actually do it at some point. But in this poll, it looks like most people want to see a Marilyn Manson action figure line, and I'm not sure that actually even happened. But I know that McFarlane did do tons more rock figures, and more rock figures got made because they made quite a bit of money and people wanted to buy that as a collectible since CDs were starting to kind of die out. But that's kind of neat to see looking back at it. And then we're getting into the news, and again, this is a huge sign of the times. 1998, The Dark Knight returns, not the comic, but the Batman character. So the Batman animated series, I guess, was coming to an end. It had already been on TV for at least 5 years, and so now, as we know, they launched a sequel series called Batman Beyond. But here in this article from 1998 May, it says it was called Batman Tomorrow, and it was coming to life on Kids WB. So there talks the story is the same. It's about the Terry McGinnis getting the new armor, working with Bruce Wayne, but it starts at 9 a.m. on Batman Tomorrow, kicks off an hour of television, including the Men in Black, the series, Batman and Superman. So I guess those were still reruns of the old show, but that's really interesting to see how they were promoted it out here, and that Kenner had the license to make the figures, and so they would. But looking at this and learning the name that was Batman Tomorrow was the original title, it's quite interesting before it became Batman Beyond. Toy Biz, of course, famous for doing the Marvel figures. Here we go. We're seeing them doing World Championship Wrestling, and they're doing figures for Bret Hart and Lex Luger and things like that. So that's quite interesting to see. That's when Alan Fine was the Toy Biz CEO running that, and we'll have I guess more pictures and stuff to show at the 1998 International Toy Fair. I guess that was a major year. That was like kind of like the pinnacle of all the toys happening at that time. Another good thing, the last review I did for the last issue of Toy Fair, we talked about one of the other Rob Liefeld creations. This one isn't a Liefeld creation, but it was under his Awesome Entertainment imprint for comics, and it is called the Fighting American, which was also a Jack Kirby, Joe Simon character. So I guess they didn't own Captain America. They wanted to create their own Captain America-ish character, so they created a new version called the Fighting American. They own the rights to it, I believe, and Liefeld licensed it, created some new comics with some amazing art by up and newcomer at the time, Ed McGuinness, who is now like superstar status. Back then, I think it was just starting out. And of course, to go alongside the release of a new comic and get some attention, there's also an action figure for it. So this is the original sculpt for the figure, which I believe did come out alongside the comic book series. So looks pretty neat. Again, we're going to show more of these independent figures. I mean, this is quite interesting to see. Matt Martin's independent comic called Snowman had a figure. It came from Avatar Press. Small publisher, had its own comic book line, and then that looked pretty cool. And then this one is a Gwen figure, another character from the Snowman comic series. So I don't remember how popular this was. I don't remember. It looked kind of McFarlane-esque. The art kind of got that over-exaggerated poses. Assuming it was about some sort of snowman character and the characters around that. I don't remember quite well, but that's just another example of the independent toy scene that was going on at that time. Very exciting. Here's a showcase of one of the cool figures. It's the action figure version of the Tauntaun of Luke Skywalker in Hoth gear. Of course, this is great stuff. It's on sale now. At that point, very cool to finally see that out as a release when it never came out in the original line. Robocop, amazingly, Robocop 10 years after it came out as an R-rated movie, and I think it finished its third go-around in the early 90s. Now in the late 90s, there's a Robocop animated show. It's called Alpha Commando. I vaguely remember this as well. It looked like it was a PG version, not like a G version of Robocop for animated for cartoons, mornings. And a company called Toy Island got the license to produce that. If you remember Toy Island, I think it's going to be time to do a bunch of videos talking about these old toy companies that no longer exist, but really did do a lot of work at the time, at the beginning making these action figures from some of these new animated programs. So this one was it. It says here that it is a 40 half-hour episodes, and it was going to be directed by Larry Houston, veteran of shows like X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Iron Man. So they were going to do that. Their Toy Island was going to ship a bunch of new figures, 12-inch figures, die-cast vehicles, all kinds of stuff based off of the iconic designs from the movies, but then, of course, lightened down for kids' cartoon series. So I don't remember this series very much, but they look quite cool. I like to maybe look them up, but definitely talk a little bit more about Toy Island in the future. And some company updates. These are some of the things that we talked about in the last episode, talking about the previous issue. There's a Usagi Jumbo figure coming out. There's the 3 Big Bang figures from Graffiti, the Madman, Kevin Matchstick from Mage, and the Hunter Rose version of Grendel. So these were all kind of coming. So I guess they're just about to come out, just as a kind of reminder that they're about to pop out. These are very cool figures. I thought that they were all looking really neat. And as you can see, no Star Wars, no Batman. These are like 5 completely independent comic series, and people went crazy for them because it was great to see that, because there was a big, these comics are doing really well in the 90s, so to get action figures out of them as well, not just the famous TV superheroes, was great. Seeing an ad here for Wizard 81. It's also a time capsule of what was popular at that time. We've got Cable on the cover by the artist called Ladron, who was amazing. I haven't seen him work very often since, but he's there, and I guess George Perez was back on Avengers at this time, or about to go back onto it at that time. And Generation X was the new Young New Mutants type comic that was popular in the X universe for Marvel. All right, so now here comes the main feature of the issue. It's going to be a special report from the American International Toy Fair in 1998. I think I was actually at this one. So every year in New York City, every toy company will come out and have a showroom at the toy building, and basically all the buyers from every single major retail outlet would be there to take a look at what was coming. So buyers from Walmart, from Target, Toys R Us, KB, like every single toy company would be there to take a look. Of course, we're only interested in action figures, but of course there's the normal Lego toys. There's going to be all the other kinds of toys, plush dolls, Barbies, like every kind of toy you can imagine was in the showrooms there, and then the ones that weren't as big would be in the Javits Convention Center, and they would be more of an open walk around, and you see new ideas. But the ones that we concerned the most of, and the big one that every toy collector wanted to get into, was the toy building to take a look at, say, the Kenner booth or the McFarlane booth, and this was the big show. Remember, this is before the internet. This is what the most amazing thing is, that we all have to fly to New York to see this. Now, I don't know if that Toy Fair is even around anymore, or it definitely doesn't have the importance it does as it did 20 years ago. It's basically when something new comes out, it's on the internet, everybody sees it, boom, you buy it, you don't buy it, it doesn't really matter anymore. But going to the Kenner showroom to see the Star Wars, Power of the Force, all the new figures, who are they doing this year? The last issue there was a poll to see which is your next Star Wars figure. Mon Mothma was on there, but they're already making her, so there she is. Amazingly out there. You've got all kinds of other crazy characters, Lobot, the AT-AT driver. They were releasing those 3-pack scenes like the Minoc hunt. So you can see all this stuff first. I mean, this is a magazine, so I believe it was in February was the event, so it's already a few months later already. If you had a dial-up connection, if you were on the internet back in 1998, you could have seen them on websites back then as well. But for the masses, this is how you would find out what was going on. It sounds like it's like I'm talking about the 1950s, but this was only 20 years ago. More exciting toys here. I love these Epic Force figures that they did. They came in these kind of cool cones. They weren't really action figures. They're more like kind of statues, and then you could move them around in circles on these bases. But I guess because they were a little bit bigger scale, they had more detail, and they were a little bit better looking. Of course, Beanie Babies are popular, so of course you'll see soft versions of famous characters. Jabba the Hutt, Gamorrean Guard, Yoda, people like that. But that doesn't seem like a lot, right? I mean, today, I think if you went to Hasbro Star Wars showroom, you'd see a lot more than this. This is only like 2 pages of stuff. We're going to go into Playmates showroom, and it looks like they're releasing a lot more Star Trek stuff. At this point in 1998, I'm not sure how many years they've been releasing product here. I can't remember, but I guess it had been a few years, because this is when you start releasing transporter figures, which are just old molds with different types of plastic. So basically they cast it in, say, this translucent plastic, and they just paint half of it and then put it in a special base that lit up and looks like it's on a transporter. This is how, when you get creative, when you run out of ways to do Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, right? But they included Picard, you got Worf, you got Riker, you got LaForge in there. You still got the basic new packs, and you can see by these characters, we're digging deep into the characters. Andorians, you got some, I don't know who these people are. They got the two, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock from the City on the Edge of Forever. I mean, that's pretty vague. Remember, I mean, it was a great episode, but it's like, okay, let's get them in there in some different outfit other than their traditional Starfleet uniform. So quite interesting to see that. They are also doing 9-inch collector series. So you got Locutus of Borg, you got Kira from a specific episode, Deep Space Nine. You've got Spock in his admiral's uniform and his I don't know, dead hippie outfit. You've got Data as Sherlock Holmes, and they also did twin packs for different kinds of scenes. So I guess they took a bite out of what Kenner was doing with Star Wars, and you'll see like the original series, Next Generation sequences there done in action figures. You also, if you don't remember or you weren't around that time, Wizard did everything to do with comics. Toyfare was their toy magazine, and they had one called Inquest that did card games. But they do special issues like this one, Sci-Fi Invasion. I guess this one may have been a quarterly thing, but not as frequent. But it would just feature, of course, all the science fiction movies and TV, anything that was coming out popular. Again, no internet. This is the only way people can market this kind of stuff. And I'm sure there was a lot of ads based around sci-fi companies. So anybody selling anything to that audience, this is what these things were basically created to do. Wow, so there's another 2 pages here of Playmate Star Trek products. So it's pretty amazing to still see this. 6-inch Ultra Tech series, great. It's kind of similar to the Epic Force series from Star Wars. You got better sculpts and you got cool backgrounds to go with it. So you got 7 of 9 there with a Borg background. You got some 12-inch masterpiece of captains here, and also the 9-inch. So wow, they had 4.5, 6-inch, 9-inch, 12-inch Star Trek figures, and they did like everybody. So if you just wanted to collect Kirk, you'd have tons and tons of Kirk. If you wanted Picard, you'd have tons of choices of Picard stuff. So amazing amount of stuff to choose from. The 9-inch collection also included like Dax when she was in her Trials and Tribulation classic outfit. Okay, the Telosian's in there, right? You got all these like super hardcore characters from Edith Keeler from that one specific episode. So this is, and they sold great. They sold great until they didn't, right? They were doing quite well. There's even a 12-inch classic Alien series and a 12-inch Latinium edition series. So you can see they just made everybody. Look at the Gorn. This looks great. Because the Gorn, and maybe you don't want just a little plastic one, you want a 12-inch one as well. So they did a great job, Playmates. It's going to be always an iconic line they did later with Simpsons, but they're in the Ninja Turtles, they did a great job of the licenses they had. They really stuck to it, and they really gave the collectors what they wanted. There's even more here. There's a diorama sequences stuff here, so you can see a couple more lines. There wasn't enough Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock figures apparently, so they made more of them from Mirror Mirror. And it looks like Playmates also went after the Zorro license. So 1998, if you remember the Mask of Zorro, Anthony Hopkins was the older Zorro and was passing on the gauntlet to the younger Antonio Banderas to become the new Zorro. So they got the license and they made a bunch of assortments of figures. They did come action thing, like you push a button on the back, and so it's obviously made for kids. Just imagine that, right? You don't see any of those kind of action, necessarily a lot of those action things happening unless they're with like the younger Ninja Turtle figures. But Zorro, man, just think about that. I mean, that movie doesn't scream toys to me. Like you see a Zorro today, and you wouldn't be getting toys. You don't see the Gemini Man going out there looking for licensees to make action figures for it, right? But back then, it had to have an action figure line to go with it, or it just wasn't cool enough. All right, now we're going to go on to the Toy Biz stuff. Toy Biz goes on for a few pages, so get ready for this. This is all the Marvel product, right? So Toy Biz, as we remember, is part of Marvel back then, and actually they were making more money than the Marvel comics, and basically I think they owned it until they sold it. And all the problems you hear today about why is Spider-Man part of Sony and all these characters are all split up was because of Toy Biz, and they were just so powerful at this time that they controlled what was going on at Marvel. And here's the reason why, because look at all the action figures they created. So the famous cover series was taking like those kind of Mego dolls with the 9-inch bodies and the real cloth outfits. They did such a great job with this. I don't know what series this is. But they've got Mr. Sinister, they've got Black Widow, they've got Falcon, they got Daredevil. These are great, great figures. I remember the boxes were great. I also remember the mail-in Aunt May from that line. It was pretty cool because you never thought you'd see an Aunt May, but they'd made it. And then we go into a lot of these kid kind of action figure lines. Spider-Man Bug Busters, Spider-Man Street Warriors. Still very exciting to see, like, they weren't just like 5 Spider-Man figures and one random other character. They would mix Spidey up with Jack-O-Lantern, Silver Sable, Vulture. You get these other characters of some kind of other bug character to for playability. That was the main point. Street Warriors. Sure, Street Warrior, Spider-Man, why not? Spider-Sense, Peter Parker, that makes sense. But wow, you're getting a Vermin and you're getting a Scarecrow figure in this assortment. Pretty amazing. So that's something that's quite deep you get to go into. And then they're here Spider-Man Web Splasher Blasters. Okay, I guess Kayak Spidey, sure, why not? Wind Attack Spider-Man, he's windsurfing now, I guess. But you got a Namor, which is cool, and kind of a cool looking Hydro Venom. So I still remember, arguing with friends about, like, why does Spider-Man need to windsurf? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, he doesn't windsurf in the comics and in the cartoon. He's not a windsurfer. And then flash forward 20 years, and we have a movie called Into the Spider-Verse where it's totally acceptable that there are different kinds of spider people now. There's female Spider-Gwens. There's Spider-Pigs. There's all kinds of characters now. So Spider-Man is really just being accepted, like it could be anything now. But back then, it was a playability factor for kids. Like even these ones, the Spider-Man shapeshifters, you got a Spider-Man, a Lizard, and a Venom that basically took the Transformers molds, basically could transform the Lizard action figure into a real lizard. I don't know what the hell this guy's supposed to be. Venom is a 3-headed serpent, but okay. Whatever. I mean, the toy designers must have had quite challenges to kind of figure these things out and kind of make them cool still. Like Spider-Man Flip and Trap. I mean, you got yourself another Spider-Man. You got 2 Spider-Mans in this assortment, but you also got a Red Skull, which is a Captain America villain. You got Sandman, and man, look at this. They even went... So sometimes I really think that the people at Toy Biz... Well, we know that people at Toy Biz were Marvel fans, because what normal company would create a Madame Web figure if they could, right? They would just opt for another Spider-Man and slap them in there, but they went, no, for this assortment, we're going to put Madame Web, which is this very, very esoteric character in the Spider-Man world. But if you watch the animated series, sure, she was probably a pretty important player in there and kind of introduced the whole alternate reality thing to the Spider-Man world. So she's definitely important, but I'm not sure what kids are going on, because, look at these. These are for kids. Look, he's got this giant skull. These are not real things. So what little kid's going, oh my God, Mom, I gotta get Madame Web. Like, she's like the coolest character. Which I mean, today, hey, I'm, older, I would think, yeah, I gotta get the whole selection, and I would love to have Madame Web in my collection. But back then, for little kids, kind of weird, right? And then we go over to the X-Men line. I think X-Men was definitely, based on the cartoon series on Fox, was definitely the most popular thing. It was like the G.I. Joe and Transformers from like 5, 6, 7 years earlier, right? Everything was Wolverine and Cyclops. Everybody loved X-Men. Everybody knew all the characters too. Like, they even had a Maggot figure. They have Mr. Sinister, Cyclops, Jean Grey. You've got Blink, X-Man. I don't know who these two are. Spat and Grovel. You've got, it looks like Apocalypse, but he's called Omega. You got Wolverine, you got Cyclops, you got another Jean Grey, and you got something called a Battle Blaster Bomber. You got Marvel's Most Wanted, you got Flying Fighters, you got Battle Blasters. So again, play value is high, but also it seems like they really wanted to make sure that you got your hardcore X-Men characters in there as well. More X-Men toys, not finished yet. Here's another one called Power Slammers, where you get a new Gambit, a Rogue, a Master Mold, and a Wolverine with another kind of vehicle. I guess maybe that you bought the pieces together and they formed this thing. I'm not sure. But, again, play value. Looks like this thing shot little X discs out of it. And X-Men also got the Transformer approach. They got Wolverine transforms into a mutant wolf. The Juggernaut can transform into a tank. And Morph, who was actually a morphing character, could transform into Mega Missile. That I don't get, but maybe that's from the cartoon. Not too sure, but very interesting. And then check out these, are very interesting. X-Men Battle Bases. Transforming vehicles with projectile firing weapons are on the order for this assortment, featuring Magneto Battle Base and Wolverine Battle Base. So I guess more play value again for kids. It just seems weird, coming from comics, but I guess this is like the trade-off of doing some weirder figures. You got to do the ones that do play value as well for Toy Biz. Again, I'm pretty sure I can find some of the original Toy Biz crew out there online, and I'd love to have them come on and interview them, talk to them about the development of some of these figures, because this is really such classic stuff that everybody remembers from their childhood. Here's another ad for Wizard World Chicago. They've got special guests. They've got Walter Koenig and Claudia Christian from Babylon 5, but of course from Star Trek as well. Oh, we're not finished yet, so we're going still to do it. There's more Toy Biz. I think this looks like the last page of Toy Biz. Silver Surfer had a comic book and a animated show at the same time, out at that time. I think he was the last one coming in, trying to focus on the cosmic stuff. Like, you can think about it, right? So Silver Surfer makes sense. He's a cool guy. He looks neat. Kids will love surfboarding kind of characters. A lot of play value in that. But also all the characters that surround the space Marvel, right? As we know now with the MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy touches on so many different alien characters in the Marvel Universe. So I guess Silver Surfer was to do that. And they kind of showed here. You got Drax here. In his original comic look. You've got Reyes, some kind of Skrull character. You even have Thanos. You've got Pip the Troll. You've got, I don't know who these guys are, Ivar and Ant Warrior, but you had Galactus as well, alongside these kind of specialized Silver Surfer figures. So very interesting. And then getting really, really deep cuts into the cosmic Marvel. You've got Nova, you've got Adam Warlock, and you've got Ronan the Accuser, which also became part of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Molten Lava Silver Surfer. So when I see this, when you also see this, you'll be thinking, wow, I can't wait for the Silver Surfer to integrate into Guardians of the Galaxy and see him teaming up with some of these other characters. You know they're going to do it because people have seen them and remember them. I kind of vaguely remember the animated show. I thought it was pretty good. It had some CG elements to it, but it looked cool. It looked very Kirby-esque, which is neat. But Silver Surfer himself is not a dynamic character. He's not a Wolverine. He's not a Spider-Man. He's kind of more of a, melancholy type character. I'm not sure how many kids would really associate themselves with that kind of a character. They could have just changed his personality a bit to make him a bit more exciting. But anyways, I think that thing didn't last either. It lasted the season and was off. But still, produced some cool figures. You're never going to see those again. All right, now let's get into McFarlane Toys. So McFarlane Toys released some new stuff here as well. Most notably here is the X-Files figures. Remember, back then, they couldn't get sculpting of likeness of people. Either the rights were not available or they just couldn't do it. There's no scanning. There was no digital sculpts. There's nothing like this back then. So to have the McFarlane team who were really good at doing likenesses to Scully and Mulder was pretty amazing. So you had very accurate X-Files. And again, X-Files, man, that was like pop culture phenomenon at the time. Everybody loved X-Files. It was super popular, and anything to do with the supernatural and those kind of aliens and things was great. Also very cool to see is the Todd McFarlane Monsters Series 2. I remember Series 1 sold very well for something that wasn't based on a comic or a movie or a video game. He just took like Dracula, the werewolf, Mummy, and those characters and made them into these kind of interesting little 4-inch scale figures, but they had these really elaborate play sets with them. I thought it was really cool, and I don't know, I guess it didn't do well later on, or I don't know why they didn't copy it over to some of the other properties they had, but it seemed like it was kind of fun. They did a few more of these monster play sets, and I'll always remember them because they always look so cool when you took them out of the packaging. Looks like here they are doing the second series, including the Sea Creature, a Mummy playset, Phantom of the Opera playset, and a Dr. Frankenstein playset. So those are the 4 in Series 2. I don't remember those ones as well as the first series, but definitely very cool figures and very creative stuff coming out of the McFarlane Toys for sure. So because I remember I mentioned earlier, the Kiss line was very successful, so they did a new one called Psycho Circus, which it says here was actually their concert tour look. So this is the kind of theme. So I guess they were fighting like an evil circus. That was the thing. But look at this Gene Simmons. It looks incredible. Like, this was a toy you could find at Toys R Us or KB Toys for like $10. It was just incredible. The design, the creativity, the scale, the detail, just amazing. I mean, everybody loved McFarlane Toys. It's just like the gold standard of stuff. Manga Spawn 2, you got the Dark Ages Spawn. I'm not sure why there's only like a couple of pictures here. I guess maybe they're saving it for later, but there's definitely a lot more figures behind that. And of course, they're doing well with their Movie Maniacs line that started off, the reinvigoration of a lot of things like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th series, things like that. Species, kind of popular at the time. I'm not sure if people remember it today, but it was cool. So that's the end of McFarlane Toys. Should have been a lot more, but that was it. Going on to more action collectibles, or Mac Claiborne Moore. He was great. He was a great sculptor, and I guess he became a really good businessman. And like I said, you got McFarlane, who everybody knew was just a comic book artist, now like a superstar toy manufacturer. So everybody wanted to get in on the deal. So Mark Silvestri's Top Cow, which is part of the Image Group, which is friends with McFarlane. I don't know why he didn't just do the figures with McFarlane. He decided to go and partner with Claiborne Moore and MAC and do these Witchblade figures with them. I mean, Claiborne Moore had a reputation for sculpting really sexy women, so he did a great job with some of the Witchblade figures. He also went and grabbed himself the license for Beavis and Butthead, another great pop culture icon of the time. Just fantastic to see that these guys are still here. Yeah, I think we need a resurgence of Beavis and Butthead. I wonder where they went to. They should be coming back soon. A reboot coming out soon. Okay, then we jump to Kenner. New Batman Adventures. We talked about the Creeper last time. Looks like there's an undercover Bruce Wayne. A couple more figures mentioned here, but not shown for some reason. Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. These were these kind of alternate reality Batman figures that were really detailed. I mean, look at that Clayface. Lava Fury Batman. Look at this Dark Knight Batman. Looks amazing. And Batgirl. So these are really cool. Again, these are like very collector-friendly, older collector-friendly kind of figures. But you could find them at Toys R Us next to all the animated stuff. So this is definitely, they knew that their collectors were a little bit older and wanted something more challenging. I mean, this Batman looks very Japanese, very cool. Clayface looks great. That stuff looks neat. Of course, and then so you got like the super animated stuff for everybody. You got this for more for adult collectors. Then you have this kind of middle ground here called Batman Night Force Ninja. I think we talked about it last time. You got a Killer Croc. You got a Battle Knight Batman. You got an Azrael figure. You got a Martial Combat Robin. You got, wow, karate figures. They just mixing everything together in martial arts with Batman. But there's a lot of play value because there's a lot of these extra components to put together. Oh, and here we go. The saddest thing about 1998 was the release of the film Batman and Robin. So the fourth Batman film had a line of figures. I guess, I don't know, by looking at it, it looks like they thought it was going to be big, and they probably sold a bunch. You got Wing Blast Robin, you got Drone Cape Robin, you got Battleboard Batman, you got a Mr. Freeze figure. So you had all of them going on, and they were going. And it says here, come on back next issue. Okay, so next issue there'll be more photos. This is just all they could fit into this issue, apparently. So come back in the next 30 days. So the next issue we'll talk and see what else they had to show from the 1998 International Toy Fair in New York. Oh, look at this. For the next issue, they're going to do a first Kenner limited edition, which is obviously a repaint of the Flash, and they just call it Reverse Flash. Back then, who knew who the Reverse Flash was, right? Now, if you watch the CW Flash show, the Reverse Flash or Professor Zoom is like the most famous villain of Barry Allen of all time. I mean, he was famous in the comics, but not everybody knew who he was. They just thought, why is there a yellow Flash? But he's so integrated into the Flash origin and legacy. It's quite interesting. So interesting to see that back then they had an exclusive figure based off of that character. Some sneak peeks. Okay, so we'll take a look at some other things. So I guess these may or may not have been Toy Fair, but of course they'll send some stuff to them through the mail. So again, Skybolt Toys. Again, I don't know much about Skybolt. I kind of vaguely remember the name, but it looks like they got licenses for every independent comic that was out there. And here we go with Exo Manowar. So Valiant Comics, of course, still around today or reincarnated today. But back then, you know, they were taking a lot of the old Gold Key characters and making a new universe created by some of the big Marvel guys like Jim Shooter and Bob Layton. Those guys went over there. And so they're obviously getting into the game and doing their own figure. That does not look like that at all. I'm not sure what's going on here. Again, you know, it's all about the sculpt, right? And I want to do a whole episode just about sculpting, like the old days of how people used to do clay sculpts and things like that. You know, you could do them in China. You could hire people in the U.S. There's all kinds of different people doing sculpting. And of course, as you can tell, you know, some people were better than others. And this is, I don't know. This, to me, this doesn't look very good. It doesn't look like this picture at all. But I guess again, hey, Exo Manowar has a figure. He must be a cool comic. I should be buying it too. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. Okay, another feature story here. Look at this picture. I mean, a lot of people have seen Larry Hama today. This is Larry Hama 20 years ago, right? I think he's Is he still working at Marvel? I'm not sure. I didn't read this article. I'm going to go back and read it later. But everybody knows Larry Hama is the man behind G.I. Joe. He was working at Marvel. He came up with something called Fury Force that took care of like Nick Fury's son and had an undercover team of special ops characters within the Marvel Universe. Jim Shooter didn't pick it up, but Jim Shooter had a meeting with a company called Hasbro, and they were looking to relaunch G.I. Joe, those 12-inch dolls, as a 3 3/4-inch line that just used the name G.I. Joe as the code name for the team rather than a person. And then he went to Larry Hama, and Larry Hama had this Fury Force idea, rejigged some of the ideas, and that's it. Basically, a ginormous windfall for Hasbro and for Marvel and for collectors everywhere. G.I. Joe was born in 1982. It's just incredible. So this is kind of an interview with him. So this magazine article is only 6 years after the release of the first wave of G.I. Joe action figures. Okay, so if Larry Hama is about 40 years old here, so he was in his early 30s when he created G.I. Joe. So think about that. And he had spent time in the Vietnam War. I believe that's where he got a lot of his ideas from, because he would actually spent time in the war. But this is an amazing thing to see, yeah, because here it shows his birthday is 1949, right? He's from New York City. He was an editor. He's been working in comics for a long time, I think, since he got out of the war. And of course, as you know, he created characters, some of the most iconic characters, the characters I grew up with as a kid that I loved so much: Snake Eye, Storm Shadow, Stalker, Scarlet, Cobra Commander, Destro, Baroness, the animated series. Everything about this guy, he's like a Stan Lee to me. You know, he just created one universe, but this universe spans so many things when we were kids that it's just an incredible achievement. And he's one of the heroes. He would be on a Mount Rushmore of comic book creators for sure, just for touching so many people's lives with his creations, right? Especially when the first character is like a ninja and he didn't speak, and now he's going to have a movie about him this year. So it's fascinating to talk about this. So they're asking him things like, what's your involvement in the animated series? He says none. But so he's basically designed all the cards, backer cards. He wrote the comic book series, which of course had nothing to do with the animated series or the films or anything. So everybody was doing their own thing. It was kind of weird that none of it really lined up. Today that would never happen. It would definitely be all lined up and people would be on the same page before anything happened, right? Like even all the Star Wars stuff is pretty lined up. But G.I. Joe back then was like everybody's doing their own thing. If you're reading the comics, you're probably a little kid. If you're watching the cartoons, maybe you weren't buying the comics, so there's no real confusion. As long as you had these characters, Zartan, Tunnel Rat was based off of him. Just incredible to look at this stuff, right? And he also, if you don't know, Larry Hama also created Bucky O'Hare, which was a comic book and well as an animated series and a cartoon. You get a lot of leeway once you create G.I. Joe to see what your runner-up is. Unfortunately, Bucky O'Hare wasn't as popular as G.I. Joe or anything else. But, I remembered it looked cool. Michael Golden did the artwork. He's a fantastic artist. And Continuity Comics published it. You can still get them out today, the Green Rabbit. I think they're actually even coming back. Some toy company now is going to re-release the Bucky O'Hare. Is already re-releasing new sculpts of Bucky O'Hare, which look fantastic. So there's still a lot of people grew up here in this time, like myself, or like buying toys again and getting remembered to all this stuff. So very, very interesting interview here. Definitely seek out anything you can of Larry Hama. I recommend a magazine I love called Back Issue. It does a lot of interviews with things from the Bronze Age of comics, and there's a lot of information on really deep interviews with Larry Hama and some of the other creators of Transformers and G.I. Joe comics, which is great. I'll link it in the show notes down below for this video. Here's a Xena and Hercules Quest contest, so you can see that was something popular with Topps Comics. Very interesting. You can win some jackets and some action figures. Look at all that. All right, and then, of course, getting to the middle of it, we see more of these, it's called the Mego Theater, but now I guess they're using the famous cover masterpiece characters because they can maybe animate them better, move them around better, got more newer figures. The Spider-Man looked a lot more like Spider-Man. At least he had a cloth mask on the Mego figure. It just had a plastic head. But these are just made to have fun. Look, isn't that Boss Hogg from Dukes of Hazzard? It's not even there's kind of stuff like this. But they also make fun of Iron Man's alcoholism and things like that in here. Look, they're fighting Beanie Babies. Quite fun stuff. And as I mentioned last time, of course, this evolved into a Robot Chicken TV show. So it's great. Spice Girls are in there. They're Dukes of Hazzard. So these guys are total pop culture nerds, and I guess a lot of in jokes for people who grew up with that stuff as well. This month's special figure is Sink or Cinch. I still don't know how you pronounce his name. He was one of the members of Generation X. You can see he's a repaint of something else. I don't know what, but I'm not sure. This must be a special figure if you wanted to get him. But he was the Generation X figure, Toyfare exclusive. Again, another retrospective. It's good to show that they are looking back at old toys, but I mean, old toys, I don't know. This is from 1983, so this is only 5 years ago, right? Can you imagine? 5 years ago, toys from today, like 2015 toys, doesn't seem that old, but 5 years ago in the 80s, it seemed like a lifetime ago when Voltron was popular. I mean, look at this. This is like Japanese craftsmanship for their toys. When we got them, they were like plastic, right? Plastic crap. These are like really expensive, fancy things for the Japanese market. And Matchbox released them out here in the 80s. So it's not even that long ago when this magazine came out, but today they're like hardcore to find, right? So this is probably a good story. I probably should read this and go over this as well. I want to do a whole video on Voltron toys as well, from the different people that made them. Not necessarily the animated shows, but the toys itself are quite cool. Even when they relaunched them, and now there's the Netflix show, right? So Voltron's been around for a long time. He's done well. He's been kind of like that, not as big as the Transformers, but definitely very popular out there. Robot series. Another edition of Homemade Heroes. So you can see how nerdy the readers are of the magazine by the characters they come up with. Okay, Manhunter, very, 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 very niche character. One of my favorite characters. So when I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, that's cool." But yeah, somebody made this and explains how they made it with this thing called Super Sculpt. You saw a lot of words. So people had a lot of sculpting out of that kind of putty stuff. You got Starman, who was a really popular comic book series at the time. The Earth 2 Robin. I mean, wow. Huntress and Phantom Lady. I mean, these are for comic nerds. You really definitely have to know these characters, and you've seen them in comics. But it's good fun to see people making these things. Oh, another contest here, Star Trek Homemade Heroes contest. Good, get you to mail in. I guess this is the interactive feature of a magazine, of a printed paper magazine in the old days, right? Nowadays, there's always like a YouTube video with like a giveaway at the end, so it's no big deal. But back then, you have to fill out your name, cut out your magazine, send it in, and hope that maybe you might win whatever the prize was, the grand prize. One lucky Trekker or Trekkie, we're never sure, will win one of the first figures off the line from Playmates Warp Factor 4 assortment. Look for the, 000. So you get the number 1 edition of them, and that will be the thing you'll get, like Andorian Prisoner, Trelane, Kira the Attendant, Kiko, O'Brien, and Kang. Wow. Warp Factor 4 assortment. There's nobody famous in that assortment. That's incredible. So anyways, this is kind of neat, but this, I guess, is the engagement level, so they would know, I guess, how many people are reading the magazine based on how many people entered the contest. Because how do you know, other than selling that, how many people are actually paying attention to the content in there? Okay, and again, one of my favorite, probably the favorite section of the magazine, the top 10 hottest action figures. This is only one issue later, and you can see the entire Star Wars lineup changed, but the DC figures are basically identical, right? So last time we had, I think, Han Solo and Tauntaun was the top figure. Now it's the Bespin Luke Skywalker from Power of the Force. Number 2 is the Princess Leia Organa and Ewok Celebration outfit. Number 3, for some reason, the Endor Rebel Soldier, just a generic character. But okay, like I said, I don't know how they count these, but these are the figures that people are talking about, I guess. The Lando Calrissian and General's gear from Power of the Force. Then at number 5, a new character is the Tomb Raider, which Toy Biz released as well, based on the video games. The movies hadn't come out yet, but the game was super, super popular on PC. And I remember a lot of people were playing it when we were reading these magazines. Number 6 is Call. So this is the Winona Ryder character from Alien Resurrection, which I think is the 4th film. And the 4th and the last film in that kind of Ripley series. And I guess she was short-packed. It says here she was a FAO Schwartz and Diamond Comic Distributors exclusive. That means really nobody wanted the human figures. They only wanted the alien figures. So that one was probably the least wanted, but hardest to find. Mad Hatter was in it last time. Nightwing was in it last time. Robin was in it last time. A new character here from Babylon 5, Ambassador Gakar. I never watched Babylon 5, so I'm not sure what it was. But again, it was an exclusive toy, so it's harder to find. So that's why it kind of makes this top 10 hottest action list. Castaways. Okay, they made a Daisy Duke action figure from Dukes of Hazzard. I'm not sure who made that, but yeah, it looks horrific. But there you go. If you're a fan of the Dukes of Hazzard, there was a Daisy Duke figure, and you know that's where the name for the shorts comes from, right? Okay, that's pretty cool. Top 10 hottest action figures for May 1998. All right, Market Watch. Okay, so this is mostly about the fact that there are a lot of new video game action figures coming out. So we're now starting to evolve out of comics and Star Wars and going into video games, as there's a Tomb Raider figure, Final Fantasy VII, Duke Nukem, Resident Evil, and Street Fighter vs. X-Men. Okay, they're still from the same players, Toy Biz, Resource. Oh my god, I haven't heard that name in ages, but Resource and Bandai, of course. We sold tons of Final Fantasy VII figures online at actionace.com because that game was like another pop phenomenon. I'd never heard of Final Fantasy 1 through 6 before, but Final Fantasy VII, Cloud Strife, Tifa Lockhart, oh my god, those characters were like so iconic. It was a huge, huge thing. So very exciting to see that the video game characters are starting to come out. So that's like PlayStation 1, that's like Nintendo 64. This is 1998. Those consoles, man, it's just crazy. PlayStation 5 is now coming out, right? So it's just incredible to see. What's going on here? Force costs $1 more. Oh, they raised the price. Oh my god, they raised the price from $5 to $6. $6 for a Star Wars action figure in 1998. Think about that. It's incredible. It's like buying a 60-cent comic book in the 80s compared to like $4 today. It's incredible. Batman still captures collectors. Of course, Batman. I mean, there's not much to say. People love the animated series, and you could get all the. You know, I remember even old people, old guys, old collectors who love seeing Mad Hatter from the 40s. They were buying those figures, so you're competing against not only other collectors that were kids and 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, but 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds. Everybody wanted Batman animated series. That thing just crossed so many generations. It was so good. All right, then we're going to run into the price guide. I'm not really going to go through the price guide too much other than just kind of picking out here Toy Vault doing ads for the Middle-earth toys. Very interesting to see that. ASP Droid, you know, one of those new characters nobody likes. Some Spawn. Apocalypse, this was a great figure from the X-Men Onslaught series. Great sculpt, again. Looking so cool back then even. Some people had great sculpts and some people just had bad sculpts. Blob. Man, the Blob, look at that. I mean, they didn't even care. They don't even, I mean, even 10 years before, he probably would have been a skinny guy and they just call him Blob, right? Like Secret Wars style. But here, Toy Biz, they went all in and just, let's put as much plastic in this as possible because that's what the Blob looks like. Got to put it, you know, you got to give it to Toy Biz as well. Some of the stuff is weird, but man, they really went deep cuts into the Marvel Universe characters, which is very important. Ash, remember Ash, Joe Quesada's character there. Fire Lord, wow, another deep cut. Have they even made a Fire Lord for Marvel Legends? I don't think so. Gamorrean card. There's those Final Fantasy figures from Bandai. Green Lantern. Kyle Rayner. I think this was the first Kyle Rayner figure. It was in the Total Justice line. I love Kyle Rayner. It was like the time when I was coming into comics when they redid Flash and Green Lantern, younger characters. So Wally West and Kyle Rayner were like these younger, hotshot characters taking over these legacy identities, and they were so cool. And you know, I guess they should always do that, right? So that every generation has their own version of those characters. Especially those two that are not like so defined, like a Bruce Wayne or Clark Kent, that anybody can play them. And just love them. But of course now they're no longer really part of the continuity, so whatever. We'll wait for the next reboot. Harley Quinn, good to see her there. Lady Jays, Indiana Jones, Lady Death. There's that 6-shooter from Full Moon Toys, looks super cool. Lizard, look at that, looks great. This Loki figure was awesome from the Avengers line. Wow, think about that. The Avengers line. Oh, we're doing you a favor. We're doing an Avengers line because we're making tons of money on Spider-Man, X-Men. Now we're gonna give the Avengers a bone and have them get their own figure line. And a great job, but wow, look at that. 20 years later, who is the top dog now? Amazing. Babylon 5 figures, Nightman. Wow. Ultra Force from Galoob. And there's another line you got to take a look at and go and do a whole video on. I don't remember Ultra Force had a line. I remember the Ultra Force comics. I didn't know they had a toy line, and I didn't know Galoob made them. Galoob wasn't even an independent toy company. They were making more mass market products. So for them to take on such an esoteric brand as well, very interesting. There must be a good story behind that. So we'll take a look at that. Terrax from Toy Biz, look at that. That's another great sculpt too of that character. It kind of feels like the paint application and stuff like that was kind of bad. Maybe that's why they put a lot of money into the sculpting, but not into the production value. Because today you'll see a better sculpt and better paint application. But of course, the toys cost 3 or 4 times more because the material costs are more expensive. Who knows? I have to take a look at that as well. Gorn Captain, Beetlejuician. Wow, Wicket. I'm just looking again, X-Men. These are all the X-Men figures out at that time from the core series from 1990 1995. So that's pretty interesting. Ahab with harpoon, shooting gun, $8. I guess that's mint on card and $2 loose. Wow, just incredible to see those prices. And then they got a price guide here again for statues. Cool to see the Crow. I guess so. 1998. Yeah, I guess that was the time that the Brandon Lee Crow movie came out. And then this is the creature from Black Lagoon. Very interesting stuff there to take a look at what was coming out. There's some bronze Batman figures here for $2,000 even in 1998, so that's quite interesting to see. There's some Youngblood here. Youngblood, McFarlane did Youngblood toys. Some of them were worth more than others. I don't know, probably not worth anything today, but back then they're worth something. And then again, there's only 2 pages of Beanie Babies, but they had a cover thing about them, so that's weird. But these things, I don't know, $8 for Quackers. Does anybody know anything about Beanie Babies? Probably don't really want to talk about. It's not only action figures. I'm not sure why it's in here. It's just obviously trying to pull in a different audience. But so just skip that. That's not a big deal. Todd McFarlane is still the guest. Wizard World Chicago, 1998. Again, looking at this, looks like there's a couple more companies in here than last time of new types of toys companies. Again, I want to do stories and videos on each one of these companies. It's so interesting to see. I didn't know Galoob Toys was in South San Francisco. That's interesting. Palisades was in Baltimore. McFarlane Toys, well, customer service is in Michigan, but we know he was based in Las Vegas for quite a while. Hasbro Toys, Trendmasters is in St. Louis. So interesting to see this. All right, the next issue looks like we're going to be doing Resident Evil. So the video game toys are getting bigger. They got this kind of anime look to themselves. And I don't know, I thought I just saw it was Reverse Flash. It looks like it's going to be a Star Trek Next Generation Tapestry 2 Picard as an exclusive figure, but we'll see. Toying around, here's some Toyfare photos. So this is what you would see. Maybe you'd see like the cast of the toys. They were there. But mostly it's people in business suits selling stuff. And then people just showing off what was for sale. There you go. This girl looks like she's selling Spice Girls toys. This guy's just like Robocop. These are the editors from the Toyfare magazine at the thing. But this is what it looks like. There must be tons of photos online about this. I'm going to try and dig up some of these old photos so you can see what the showrooms used to look like at Toyfare. Because I still think they were quite exciting, and the buzz of walking around in suits, buying action figures, man, what a job, right? Quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on these because I don't remember these, but Bloodlust Widow looks like another comic book, independent comic with a figure. This is what it is. This even looks kind of like a CG art for it. Doesn't even look like a prototype of it or an artwork. So $14.99 for that at mock time. Kind of interesting to see. Probably want to do like a checklist of all these figures as well. Probably it's out there already. And that's it. The last page is showing, again, the Auction Universe, which was a competitor to eBay, and we know who won that. And then what the mail-in coupon looked like for the exclusive figure from Toy Biz. All right, that's it. I'm trying to keep these down to like an hour long, just so that you can get an insight of what's happening inside each issue of Toyfare and see how it changes from issue to issue. But looking back 20 years at the toy industry, it's just an incredible journey, and it's quite fun. So please leave a comment below. Again, subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends if you think they'd like this. Drop some questions or drop some facts that things that I didn't know about this issue. I'd love to hear from them, from you below, and I'll try and incorporate it into the future videos. It's always good to talk to other toy collectors who are around and active in this era. And then, what are you buying today? Are you still looking at stuff today? And also just give an insight to the new collectors. Like, this is what it looked like before the internet. It's crazy. All right. Talk to you next time.